I wanted to turn to Hillary Clinton. Hillary Clinton in the debate that was held on Sunday night. In a moment, we're going to have a debate between two socialist feminists, one who supports Bernie Sanders and one who supports Hillary Clinton. But let me ask you about what she said during the debate. Shane, if you could talk about her view on Iranian sanctions.
Yeah, well, actually, you know, when it was announced that these Americans were getting out on Saturday, just hours after their release, Hillary Clinton called for new sanctions on Iran. And I frankly thought this was very irresponsible. I mean, these Americans were still on the ground in Iran. As you said, there was issues with Jason's wife being detained. It wasn't clear what was going to happen. And she chose to make this provocative statement at that time, you know, which directly put their freedom in jeopardy.
Well, let's go to, on the Republican side, to the response there to what has taken place. I wanted to turn to Marco Rubio, one of the Republican presidential hopefuls, his reaction to the prisoner swap.
We got the great news today that there are some Americans that are coming home. But you know why they were being captured and held hostage in the first place? Because they know that if you take an American hostage, Barack Obama will cut a deal with you. And it's created an enormous incentive for people and countries and movements around the world to do this against us.
Shane, your response.
This is just as inaccurate. I mean, the idea that Iran knows that the U.S. will cut a deal with them if they take prisoners doesn't have precedent. I mean, you know, there was the 79 hostages, but these years that Iran has been taking prisoners, they haven't been getting really anything out of it, you know, concrete. The U.S. has not been giving them anything in exchange for their prisoners. You know, you can't conflate Iran with ISIS. You know, Iran is not detaining Americans because it's, you know, thinks it's going to get some kind of ransom or there's a price on their head the way that there is for Americans, you know, that have been detained by ISIS. Iran is using this as a political maneuver. And, you know, like I said, Iran, you know, releasing these Americans is a sign that, you know, hopefully we're leaving this kind of era of, you know, what is basically hostage taking by Iran. But this is dependent on, in part, on our relationship with Iran, you know, on our ability to ease these tensions.
I wanted to go back to Hillary Clinton. On Sunday, CNN's Jake Tapper questioned Hillary Clinton on her calls for the fresh sanctions against Iran, and he read out your tweets, Shane Bauer, criticizing her comments.
On Saturday, you called for new sanctions against Iran for its ballistic missile program. That prompted a response from another American who was once held prisoner in Iran, Shane Bauer, one of the hikers released in 2011. He had some tough words for you on Twitter, writing, quote, "Seriously, why would Hillary call for more sanctions now? As far as we know, 4 of the Americans are still in Iran. Totally irresponsible," unquote. He also said whenever he was in Iran, whenever he heard your voice, his heart would sink because, quote, "all she ever does with Iran is inflame tensions." I want to give you a chance to respond.
Well, look, I appreciate what he went through when he was held prisoner in the infamous Iranian prison. And we were very happy that we were able to get him and the 2 other hikers back home. But we have a very clear path we are pursuing with Iran. I am pleased that we do have an agreement that is being implemented. And I was part of putting that in place by getting the sanctions imposed on Iran that the entire world went along with. But we also have made it clear from the beginning that their missile activity is still subject to sanction. That is part of the overall approach that the administration has taken toward Iran and that I support. So when we...
That was Hillary Clinton being interviewed by Jake Tapper on CNN. Shane Bauer, your response to what she said also, you had dealings with Hillary Clinton. She was Secretary of State during your time in captivity and when you were released, right? You met her.
Yeah. Clinton was Secretary of State the entire time that I was in prison in Iran. And, you know, when in those tweets, I was referring to times when I was in prison, I remember hearing the first time I heard Hillary Clinton's voice in a neighboring cell, somebody had a television, and I ran to the door and was kind of listening, and she basically demanded that Iran release us, and this became an ongoing issue that frankly was difficult for us in prison. It was Clinton would kind of demand that Iran act, and of course Iran is not going to do something, when the U.S. is just telling it to do so. So it would always kind of feel like, okay, now I have to settle into a couple more months in prison. Our release was really initiated by Oman. Oman saw it in its interest. Really, it saw our release as part of a larger game in starting nuclear talks between the U.S. and Iran, which it saw as benefiting Oman because they didn't want escalations between the two countries. Oman is really close to Iran, and any kind of military conflict would have impacted its economy. So Oman believed that if it could get us out of prison, then it could use that channel, of negotiation to have nuclear talks in the future. There wasn't really a channel of negotiation. I mean, there wasn't negotiation between the U.S. and Iran over our case. It was more Oman kind of going back and forth between each country and trying to convince them to do something. And the man who was in charge of this, Salam Ismaili, was constantly frustrated by Hillary Clinton. He would feel like he got close to a deal in getting us out, and then she would, make some kind of public provocation with Iran. Obviously we were released, and that channel was ultimately used to set the groundwork for the nuclear talks in the future. As far as her response to those statements, I mean, she didn't address the fact that she was putting Americans' lives at risk. And I think the question is, why is it so important to make these hard, to show that you're being tough with Iran when, these people are about to get out in a few hours. As far as the issue of the new sanctions actually were implemented the day after she made that. The Obama administration announced after these Americans had left Iran that there were going to be new sanctions on Iran. These new sanctions, are much, much more limited than the old sanctions. I mean, they're really targeted sanctions, targeting a few individuals and companies. They're not going to be draining Iran's economy like these old sanctions. But at the same time, I think we need to be thinking about the bigger picture. What is our goal with Iran? What are we trying to do? Are we trying to ease tensions with the country, or continue this kind of hostility? Iran. Nobody wants Iran to have a ballistic missiles program, which is what these sanctions are targeting. But we also, when we have such a huge breakthrough like this, I think it's important for us to step back and think about, okay, how are we gonna use this momentum and go forward?
Robert Levinson has still not been released. He's the retired FBI agent who vanished after traveling to the Iranian island of Kish in March of 2007. He was a retired FBI agent. His family confirmed he's doing independent work for the CIA. His family angry because they only learned of the prisoner swap that, of course, did not include Levinson on television. Shane.
Right. I mean, Levinson has been missing for years, and I sympathize with his family. As far as we don't know where he is exactly. His situation has always been different from the other Americans detained by Iran. It's not clear whether the Iranian government knows where he is or not. It's not even clear whether he's in Iran. There's been indications that he might be in Pakistan. We just don't know right now.
And finally, Shane, we have 30 seconds, but what advice do you have for the prisoners who are returning in how to cope? You were held at Evin Prison for more than 2 years.
Look, these guys are entering a new phase of their detention. In many ways it's over, but it's also, it's not. I mean, there's going to be difficulties in readjusting inevitably. I think they need to take it slow. I think they need to resist pressure to, stand in front of the cameras. They need to spend time with their families and loved ones, and really they just need to do what feels right for them. Nobody, including myself or anybody else who's been in their situation, knows what is going to work for them in getting back into their lives.
Shane, thanks so much for being with us. Award-winning senior reporter at Mother Jones Magazine, co-author of the memoir, A Sliver of Light, 3 Americans Imprisoned in Iran. He spent 26 months in Tehran's Evin prison, 4 of them in solitary confinement. This is